Hi, my name is Jamie Panizales, and I am an accountant and work at an accounting firm in San Francisco, and I grew up in the Philippines for 13 years.
My name is Gareth Owen. I'm an architectural project manager, and I'm from Wales in the UK, and I moved to the Bay Area 5 years ago.
I love to travel because it opens my mind to different things and different cultures and different lifestyles, and realizing that even though we're in different countries, we're all the same.
The best part of traveling for me is the sense of adventure and not knowing what's coming next and experiencing things for the first time, and it kind of takeaways from the monotony of everyday life.
When I hear the word China, I think of the different histories and also the different types of food and also the different types of culture.
When I hear the word China, what first comes to mind is the rich history.
I have never been to China before.
I've never been to China. We are going to travel along the ancient Silk Road, and we're going to be traveling by train, and it's going to be a 10-day trip.
To be honest, I don't know much about the ancient Silk Road aside from history that I took back in elementary, but I'm looking forward to explore more of it. Being a foodie myself, what I'm looking forward to the most is the food.
What I'd like to see the most is aspects of history, ancient artifacts, landmarks.
So Gareth, I will be traveling with him. He is my boyfriend, and he is very open to seeing different cultures, different adventures, and I would consider him as my adventure buddy.
Yes, on this trip I'll be traveling with my girlfriend Jamie. She's a very fun, outgoing person, also loves to travel like I do, and we have very similar interests, which are exploring new cultures and immersing ourselves in new adventures.
I am really excited about this trip and looking forward to it.
I'm extremely excited for this trip. Ever since I found out I was going, I've been thinking about it every day, and I just can't wait to go now. That's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. It's much harder. Oh no, what happened to that one?
We've got some
There's carrots?
carrots.
This is riding rails in China.
Part 3.
So today was our first day in Xi'an, and it was a brilliant day. We started off at the bell tower.
And it is located in the center of the city. They have the bell, which is used to tell time.
One thing that Jamie and I noticed immediately was the contrast in the old architecture and the new. There's some really interesting buildings.
At one side of the street, I saw a modern hotel with a bunch of Western shops. But then you can also see on the other side of the street where there's the ancient Chinese buildings with red and gold lanterns and very elaborate details.
It was fun to see the cars and buses and scooters and cyclists all navigating their way around the roundabout that encircled the bell tower. And you could hear the sounds of the traffic and the horns, and it's quite an exciting scene to be at. Within the bell tower itself is a real significant landmark. My favourite part was the figurines that were carved into the wood, and the artwork inside and everything was great. Overall, it was just a really history-rich experience.
After that, we went to a local restaurant in which we were able to fortunately observe how some of the local delicacies were cooked.
Just being inside the kitchen was such an exciting experience.
It was very, very hot, and we were able to observe how they cooked the stir-fried noodles in this really hot wok.
The chefs were so skilled with the woks, the way they were cooking on that extreme heat. Just looking at the one chef in front of me, I could just hear from the flames behind me. Just the way they were flipping the food is very impressive.
Once we observed them, we were able to try these delicacies, which is my favorite part. There you go. It's very crunchy. And there's a lot of flavor, like soy sauce. And the green beans and the sprouts make it definitely a little bit of a crunch in it.
Taste the vegetables, you can also taste a hint of the meats. With the Italian pasta dishes, I think the flavor comes from more the sauce, whereas this seems to be all the ingredients mixed in together and the flavorings and the seasonings, and there's so many different ingredients and you can kind of taste them all.
And it also reminds me actually of my mom's cooking. My mom used to cook bihon, which is a Filipino dish, and it's a lot more softer noodles. It's less crispier than this, but it definitely reminds me of that. That is really good. And it's very crispy on the outside, and the salt and pepper, it really gives it a tang.
It tastes fantastic. The skin kind of breaks off because of the crispiness of the deep fat fry, but then when you get into the meat, it's so juicy.
So this dish is called the gourd chicken, and it is first steamed initially, and so that the flavors will be soaking in, and then it'll make it tender, and then it is fried in 80-degree oil to get it a little bit crispy, but not too crispy. It's very flavorful, and especially the fermented beans itself, it holds a lot of the sauce, which is really good.
The pork almost melts in your mouth, and with the sweetness of the yam as well, it's all around lots of flavor. But yeah,
So it doesn't feel like it's very greasy.
yes, we do eat pork in the diet. I think more so in Asian countries is cooked in multiple ways. It's kind of used a little bit more simply in Wales, and I think we tend to use less of the fattier parts, which is probably where more of the flavor is. This is great. This is definitely a different way to eat pork, and it's
In the Philippines, we have a very famous dish called lechon, which is basically a roasted pig. It reminds me of that because we do love the fattiness of the skin and also the pork belly, so it really hits home.
a good amount there.
That is good with bread.
That's phenomenal. That bread with that meat inside is fantastic.
In the afternoon, we went to the Tang West Market.
The entryway was really grand. I really liked the ship that was in the entrance. It had a lot of historical significance because it represents the trade route from the ancient Silk Road.
And from there, we also went to the Tang West Museum where we could see
Actual preserved areas of the Silk Road, 1,400 years old, which were just amazing to see.
So I'm here in the Tang West Market Museum, and I'm standing on top of the ruins of the ancient Silk Road, as you can see here behind me. Here you can see two perpendicular roads, one here from this direction and the other one from here. And you can see the tracks of the carriages where they used to trade. And then over here in this area, you can find the little shops where they used to trade as well. So it's so amazing that these historians were able to dug up and unearth the ruins of the Silk Road for us to see where it all began.
After that, we were able to go into 2 different stores, one being the silk store, one being a tea shop.
Which these 2 commodities are the most commonly traded back in the day in the ancient Silk Road.
I love the way we got to sit down and discuss the tea, what the region it was from, various aspects of it. We learned the cultural way to drink the tea. I just think that's very important, the way we sat down and took our time. I think in Western culture, we rush through things like that. We'll make a tea and just drink it, rather than sitting there and enjoying the experience and living through the experience.
And was also able to see a bunch of silk products here in the Tang West Market. Xi'an is one of the oldest cities in China and used to be the capital of China for 13 dynasties. Xi'an is also the home of the terracotta warriors. Xi'an holds 9.2 million people in population, which is only 1 million more people than New York City, and the size of the city is basically 8 times the size of Phoenix, Arizona.
Overall today has just been a brilliant day. Got to experience a lot in such a small amount of time. Very excited to ride the train tomorrow, and I can't wait. We're here at Xi'an railway station. We're about to board the high-speed rail.
So we're excited for the ride and we'll see you there.
Gareth and I rode the high-speed railway from Xi'an to Lanzhou.
The train was so comfortable.
It was very smooth, fast.
The speed for the high-speed rail was actually a little over 160 miles an hour.
And it was really relaxing.
You could get a real sense of the diverse landscape that we were passing through.
When we were leaving Xi'an, we saw, a little bit of the city, and then we saw the rural area.
There was lots of farmland, way more farmland than I anticipated before coming to China. When I picture China, I picture this kind of dense, built-up area, lots of concrete, lots of buildings, and I have seen some of that, but on the train we saw just farm after farm, lots of little settlements.
There were some mountainous areas that were under construction, so that was really interesting to see that a lot of the development are going its way, even in the natural side of China. And you can see the contrast where it goes from farmland to like a little bit of development and then farmland again, and then it goes towards the city of Lanzhou. So during the ride, Gareth and I got a little bit hungry and we went to the snack bar inside the train. I got a cup of coffee and then we got a snack box. It was filled with rice and then duck.
I enjoyed the portion I ate before Jamie stole it and ate the rest, but she obviously enjoyed it.
The coffee that we got inside the trains, it was decent. It gave me the trick to have that little energy boost. It was a great transportation ride that it just made us relax. By the time we took our nap, we were in Lanzhou.
Yeah, it was a really, really fun trip. We got from Xi'an to Lanzhou in what felt like no time.
So it's 4.5 hours later. We just arrived at Lanzhou station.
And we had a fun, relaxing ride and we're ready to explore the city.
So today was a very fantastic fun day here in Lanzhou.
We started our day with the White Pagoda Temple, and when we went there, we were greeted by a group of joyful and dancing elders.
They were performing a synchronized dance in a circle at the base of the mountain. I thought that was really cool to see and something that's kind of lacking in Western culture. I think it's great for especially the older generation to engage in some kind of activity, some kind of exercise, especially socialize with each other. From then we went up the hill to an area where there was a map carved into stone in the side of the wall, and it actually depicted Lanzhou 200 years ago. And it showed how it was a very tiny city with a population of less than 6,000. As the story goes, the prince moved to Lanzhou, and from then the population just expanded, the city grew, and it now has a larger population of Los Angeles, which is actually a larger population in the whole country of Wales. And the map itself was so detailed, it showed intricate little details and buildings still here today. The map itself was taken from a painting that was found by an unknown artist who was alive during that time, who drew the city.
After that, we hiked up a little bit and went to the Buddhist temple.
When you walked in,
we got greeted by 4 statues of the protectors of the temple.
My favorite bit was the 4 figurines, 2 on either side, and they were represented the 4 seasons, and they were the protectors of the temple.
And then one very happy Buddha, which is also known as a future Buddha. We went into the temple and we saw different statues of different gods, and each god had their own specific aspect that they can help with people's lives. And from there, we burned incense and prayed to the god Shakyamuni, which is the most reigning Buddha. And we had offered our prayers. And the smoke of the incense symbolizes our prayers coming into heaven.
And I thought that was a really kind of peaceful experience.
And that experience for me was very serene and sacred, because me growing up as a Catholic, I was brought up and raised up in a different set of beliefs. And when you see another religion, even though it's a different set of beliefs, it seems like us collectively all want to live in the same objectives, which is to have love and happiness and also have good health. So that to me was very eye-opening. So after praying, we went up the White Pagoda Mountain.
It was actually quite a fun hike. It took a bit of energy and it's very steep, but it's very enjoyable. White Pagoda was actually built in the 13th century to commemorate a Buddhist Lama who was passing through the area on the way to Mongolia to meet with Genghis Khan, and he fell sick in Lanzhou and unfortunately died. It was originally built of all white marble. That was where it's got its name as the White Pagoda. Unfortunately, it was destroyed in an earthquake and later rebuilt out of brick. And what I thought was really interesting is the money that was raised to build the reconstructed version was actually gathered from locals around here. They all loved it so much that they put in their own money to have it rebuilt. And it's now built of brick, so it's no longer white, but it retains the name. And the vantage point up there was just brilliant. You could see the whole city. And there's a huge contrast between the older buildings kind of on this side of the river compared to the newer construction, the high-rises on this side of the river. You could really see that contrast, but also the views are just spectacular up there.
After the temples, we went to a local restaurant where they serve the Lanzhou beef noodles.
And that was really fun, working with that noodle master. He made it look so easy. Anybody watching would think that they could just grab one of those things and stretch those noodles out and it'd be perfect.
Interesting, they're just stretching it out.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So quick.
Yeah. When we tried it out, it was definitely harder than it seemed. It was quite comedic. Oh, more?
You got so long.
Oopsie! Oh no! It's much harder. Oh no, what happened to that one? One more? Ta-da! So hit it.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
It's hard to keep them. I've lost them already.
Wow, that's good, babe.
Oh, I've lost it though.
Oh, another one. You missed another one.
They're kind of sticking together. Oh no. Ah.
Do this.
No, they broke.
Ta-da!
Is that big enough? Thank you.
Good job.
That's way tougher than it looks.
I know. And it boiled really quick.
The end result was just some fantastic food.
Right.
The noodles are delicious. Very soft, very tasty. The meat is just melts in your mouth. You got a bit of juice on your chin.
Because it's so tasty. The beef has a little bit of fat to it, which makes it very juicy and good and tender. You can taste a little bit of the chives and the hot sauce. And this one, as you can see,
It's ginormous.
quite thick and difficult to use a chopstick with.
So I actually prefer this thicker noodle. It's not more chewy, there's more substance to it. Similar kind of flavor, it's got a bit of a kick, but you can taste all the different ingredients that are going into it. But it's just a bit more of a mouthful for me. I kind of like that.
I really like it with a thick noodle.
I love the soup. We haven't really talked about the soup very much. It's quite spicy, but the right level of spice.
Right.
I think they're both delicious, but I would probably go for the wider one if I had to make a choice.
I'd probably have to use a fork with it too. So we were able to make noodles with a noodle master, Mr. Liu, and each size has its own technique. So this one here, the thick noodles.
The way he got this wide noodle is he flattened it out on the table before he started stretching it. With the thinner noodle, he just started stretching it and kept stretching it and kept stretching it.
Yeah.
That's how he got that really thin. It's very consistent though, that's what really surprised me. If you look at the thin stuff, it's perfect. They're all exactly the same
all
size.
the same size.
Perfectly stretched out.
Yeah, I'm really loving these, the famous Lanzhou beef noodles. After we ate, we went to the Yellow River where we...
Riding down the Yellow River on the sheepskin raft, my most fun and memorable part of the day. If somebody had said to me beforehand, you're going to go on a sheepskin raft, I'd have pictured something very different to what was actually there. As you can see, it was actual sheeps that were skinned, and you could still see the kind of features, and it slightly grossed me out a little bit.
Gareth and I went and basically had a little romantic boat ride on the sheepskin raft.
Once I got on the river and I was floating down, I felt that feeling of, I can understand back in these ancient times when these rafts were used, the people only had what was available to them. It's kind of ingenious the way they used those sheep and the way they dipped them in oil to harden the skin and kept them under the sun and used them as buoyancy devices to get from one side of the river to the other, because we take for granted now that we can just hop in a car or climb on the bridge and cross. And it was very important they could cross this bridge as it connected China to other parts of Asia.
Once we were in the river, it wasn't as bouncy. There were parts of it that it seemed like we were white river rafting.
The river is actually a lot faster than it looks. When you're on the river, it moves really quick.
But just because of the buoyancy of the sheepskin, it wasn't too bad. It was quite relaxing. The color of the river comes from the soil of the river. It's a little bit muddy. That's why it's called the Yellow River, but it still seemed clean. It didn't seem polluted at all. Lanzhou is the capital and the biggest city of Gansu province in northwest China. Lanzhou has a population of 3.7 million people, which is a little bit less than Los Angeles area, but its size is 10 times bigger than Los Angeles. It is also a major link of the Northern Silk Road.
Altogether, it was just a fantastic day. We saw lots of things, we did lots of things, and it was just an all-round fantastic time. So today we started off at the Cargo Train Redistribution Center,
which is basically a bunch of cargo trains coming from different areas in China.
All the trains that will be distributing the merchandise that have come out of this new Silk Road, this One Belt, One Road initiative. And it shows the revival of the whole Silk Road marketplace. And it's a very interesting contrast as we are traveling along the ancient Silk Road to see the new Silk Road and how their methods of transportation have obviously differed over these many hundreds of years. And just the vast number of trains shows you how big of an undertaking this really is. And that's kind of a good segue into where we are right now, which is
Lanzhou New area, a new city that was planned and developed by the country's government to expand the area of Lanzhou. What they're doing is they're building an entire new city, and the plan is for the city to move 1 million people to this new city, and the goal is to have this inhabited by 1 million people by the year 2030.
When you first get here, the first thing you notice is these 6-lane highways with no other cars on the road. That's just such a big contrast to old Lanzhou, where the second you leave your hotel, it's bumper-to-bumper traffic. I actually heard that there's 300 new cars on the road in old Lanzhou every day, and I believe it. The amount of cars and cyclists and scooters, it's incredible, and that really shows you the need for this new development. We started off at the man-made lake, which was a huge, huge undertaking, I'm sure.
It was very beautiful to see because there were new plants and flowers everywhere in the park.
And surrounding the lake were huge apartment buildings and other developments.
So when we were driving around the Lanzhou New area, it was quite interesting to see because
the city is ginormous. There's new apartment buildings as far as the eye can see. Most of them are 20 stories, 30 stories high. It's literally more than you can count.
All of these are really new and really pleasing to the eye, but
the only thing that's really missing here is the people.
Currently, this new area is inhabited by only 300,000 people. So by 2030, when everything is all fully developed, it's going to be a very big and new city for 1 million people that's going to be moving and migrating here.
From there, we took the bus to here, which is the film studio, where they've constructed large, life-size models of big landmarks.
We saw two dominating structures. One is a structure from the Forbidden City, as you can see behind me. And we also saw the Heavenly Temple. back in 2012, the city was just newly built, and back then it was basically all just mountains in this area.
The way they decided to do it was to cut the mountain down, create this flat plain and rebuild to basically expand the amount of economic development. You would never have believed that that was the case coming here now because it's just flat as the eye can see.
Seeing this new area being developed, my feelings about it is kind of mixed. First is the mountains were basically cut off so that this new area will be developed. Personally, it seems very contradictory to the environment. But also talking to the locals here in Lanzhou, I could see how this is part of the solution for its people as well. One is to move the people so it could expand more. Two, it could be a solution for the pollution problem that they've previously had.
Coming from an architecture background and working in real estate development, what's really interesting to see is just the vast amount of development that's going on here. Coming from the Bay Area as well, I thought that there was a lot of development going on there, but coming here, you see it's just a tiny scale compared to what's happening here. This new Lanzhou area, all the infrastructure, everything down to the brand new landscaping, road systems, everything is all been done within 5 years, and the scale is just enormous. It's really impressive.
It's been a fun few days here in Lanzhou, and now we're here in the Lanzhou railway station to get to our next destination.
It's going to take around 4.5 hours on the high-speed rail, and we're really excited to check out Xi'an.
When we left Lanzhou, we saw part of the city that was only about 30 minutes. And you can see still like the buildings and the business of the city of Lanzhou.
After that, we entered what really felt like rural China. There were farmlands for miles and miles, for hours actually. Not far beyond them were really tall mountains, or snow-covered mountains. It almost looked like a painting when you're looking out of the train window. And we also passed through several large tunnels, so we were going under some of the mountains as well.
And it almost felt like a movie when we were going through the tunnels. And then once we passed that part, we passed by this desert-like area, and it felt like driving through the freeways of Las Vegas. You can see from each side it was just a dry vegetation, and then it was also incredibly sunny.
So on the train we had lunch, and I ordered the beef and noodles, and Jamie had the chicken and rice. Of course, in usual fashion, Jamie stole a lot of my food, as she always does, but it was actually really tasty. I actually took some of her sauce as well, because different flavors and the different meals really complemented each other.
And we couldn't stop feeding off of each other's plates. So now we're here in Jiuquan, and it has been 4.5 hours train ride from Lanzhou.
So we're really excited to be here in Jiuquan. We did a bit of research before coming, and there's a lot of exciting things that we're going to get to see. So we're excited to get started.
Yeah, and we can't wait to see what's in store for us. Let's go. Today we started exploring the city of Jiuquan.
Today has probably been the most interesting day for me so far. As a big history buff, today was a real treat.
And this morning we visited 3 tombs. So the first tomb we visited, we went down through a stairwell, and once we were going down, it was becoming like darker and colder and more eerie.
Just ascending down the little narrow staircase, it almost felt like we were going back in time. Within the tomb, it was a brick structure, and there were multiple little carvings. My favourite was there were some horses with warriors riding them, and they represented protection, so protecting the tomb.
There were carvings of musicians, and also at the top there were carvings of Chinese zodiac signs. So there was a carving of monkey, dragon, and the top of it was just brick dome-shaped roof. As we go inside the tomb, we can see a beautiful platform of where the coffin used to be. And unfortunately, the coffin was stolen by tomb raiders, and they couldn't identify who the owner of the tomb was. But it was just incredibly beautiful to see that this structure was made 1,300 years ago, and now we're sitting in the same structure in the present time, and now is being preserved for us to see.
The tomb itself was actually a lot larger than I thought, and looking at it from an architectural standpoint, from a construction standpoint, it's quite amazing that they were able to create these tombs just using brick, with no adhesive, no cement, nothing holding the bricks together. It was just really clever engineering the way they'd done this, and these are underground, so they obviously have weight on them.
After that, we went to the second tomb, and the second tomb was a little bit smaller. As we went down, it went straight into the tomb.
The second tomb was very similar to the first, except they'd used some material to paint some of the carvings, so some of the horses were coloured in.
It also had images of different Chinese zodiac signs. And the tour guide was talking to us and had mentioned that they discovered 5 skeletons and then also bones of livestock and pigs and chickens. And it also just reminded me of the tombs of the pharaohs in Egypt, where they would bury all their other belongings, including their slaves, as part of their passing on to the afterlife. So that was really cool to see as well.
That one was also 1,300 years old and just, again, very impressive. You did feel like you were back in ancient time, and you could feel the history in there.
So we had to drive a little bit farther for the third tomb.
The third tomb was actually older, and it was 1,400 years or so.
As we went down, the staircase was a lot longer.
That tomb was a lot larger. It was a lot more grand. There was actually 2 separate sections, and within that there weren't carvings, instead there were paintings. There were flying man, there were people working the field, there were servants, there were multiple different things. I really enjoyed the one that was the Mother of the West, or the Mother of the East. They're both kind of facing each other.
There were images of a flying horse, which reminded me of my favorite character in Greek mythology, Pegasus.
My favorite image, though, was there was a depiction of the owner of the tomb, the actual man who was buried there. And I thought that was just incredible, just being in the tomb and staring at the person who was responsible for all this and who lived the life back 1,400 years ago, and he was there with his servant.
It was really surreal just to be in that surroundings.
Some of the paintings were just incredible. I can imagine the painter back in ancient times there in candlelight painting these pictures, and he must have been very, very talented, because some of them were very detailed.
After seeing all the paintings, We went to where the coffin used to be. When they discovered it, the bones were still there and the coffin was still there. And the bones that they saw included the man and also his two wives.
Which kind of attests to the time and the era when he was actually buried. That's obviously socially different nowadays.
And there was also a beautiful painting in the back wall. A lot of the paintings almost have like a wave-like style in it, and it was nice to see that colors were still there and they were so vivid and it was still preserved. It was an incredible experience overall.
After lunch, we came here to the factory and museum where they create what's called the glittering cup.
So these wine cups are made of jade that were acquired from the mountains.
And they'll carve out different drinking vessels, different cups and mugs and kind of chalices, as well as other various pieces of art. The reason why they're called a glittering cup is you hold it up to the light and they illuminate under the light.
This art form has existed for over 3,000 years.
When we first entered into the factory museum, the first thing we saw was a big mural, and below it was the actual raw material, the raw jade, and it just looks like any old piece of stone. You wouldn't really think much of it.
And you can see that they had cut pieces, circular pieces of it from the rock.
And we were lucky enough to see the old way they did it.
So there were two tools, I believe. One of them was to cut the actual jade. It was almost like a hammer that cuts it in circular form. And then the second one was a device where they could cut the jade. And it was interesting to see because you can see the pedals that make the cutting device work. And it's almost like an exercise. And you can see the blade just cutting through the jade very perfectly.
And then we also got to see the comparison to that, the way they're doing it today, with the machines and kind of a conveyor belt system where one worker works on a piece, gets it to a certain level, passes it on and so on, and it goes until you have a final product.
And we saw that they were making little wine cups and they were thinning it to a point where it becomes very light.
We also had a chance to walk around and see some of the various pieces of art. And it's incredible just how they managed to get so detailed with such a firm, hard material.
One of the products that struck me most was this huge ship that was very detailed.
It's multiple pieces that are interconnected together to form this big ship, and you can take it apart and stuff, and it's just incredible what they can do with this jade material.
Towards the end, we got a lovely, lovely surprise. The owner of the factory had given Gareth and I
a great gift, something called a lover's set, which is this beautiful box, and inside the box were two of these glittering cups that can be used to drink tea or wine or whatever you choose to drink. And they're just beautiful. You hold them up to a light, you can see the unique patterns and colorings in the different cups compared to one another.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about the jade material also is it has some metal in it. The owner actually gave us a magnet and allowed us to drag the jade along a piece of glass to show the metal content of the cups.
And we were so thankful to be able to bring these items back home. It's going to be a great memory for us. Thank you.
So it's been a very early start for us this morning. We're back at the train station in Jiuquan. It's been a fantastic couple of days, but it's on to the last leg of our trip.
Yeah, and we're going to arrive in the city of Dongwang. There's going to be sand dunes, camel rides, and grottos, and it's going to be really exciting.
The trip was a little bit different to the other train rides we've had because we actually had a bed on this trip.
Each room had their 4 beds, and also the previous train rides were high speed, and this one was more of a medium speed train ride. Once we were done settling in, we went to their restaurant to get some breakfast, which is a few cars down from our room. Breakfast time.
Shishi. Thank you. Nice. It's an interesting breakfast.
Yeah.
We've got some
There's carrots.
First time I've had a sit-down meal. We've had a waiter in a little cafe area. It's pretty cool.
I think it's really cute. There's like flowers and...
We got the sun rising in the background.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's my first time just really seeing like a moving train while you're eating like in a restaurant style. It's quite charming.
I think all these train rides have been very good, very comfortable and gone really quick. It's not like a normal train where it's very tight and constricted. It's very spread out, lots of room, and it feels really smooth, and you kind of do your own thing or listen to some music or have a little sleeping before you know it, you're at the destination.
Right.
So I definitely recommend a trip like this to friends back home. I think living in San Francisco, both Jamie and I are really busy, always on the go, never have any time to just relax and enjoy it. China, even though it's kind of a fast-paced industrial city, when you're in areas like this, we've had so much time to relax and just enjoy each other, and without the internet as well, I really like not being able to get online because you always have that temptation of checking the emails and checking your social media, and It's been nice to not have that and just recharge.
And we were discussing about like how much of this is out of our comfort zone, and it's great because it opens your mind up to things that you've never tried before if you have never been outside of that bubble. And there's so many different things to explore, and it's been a great experience overall. So after our breakfast, we went back to our room where we took a nap. Maybe 2 hours later, we woke up and we saw the landscape of the beautiful desert with a lot of windmills.
It was really interesting to look out the window because all I could see was desert. And for the next few hours, that's all we saw, which was really surprising because when you think of China, I'd never thought of desert. But it seemed to go on forever, and it was pretty beautiful.
And after that, we were able to get to our next stop, which is the city of Dongwang.
So it's taken just a little over 4.5 hours, but we've arrived in the city of Dongwang.
And today we're going to check out the famous grottos, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's go. In the afternoon, we went to visit the Mogao Caves. So the Mogao Caves is basically a system of 735 cave temples, and it contains Buddhist art in the span of 1,000 years, and it stretches around 1 mile.
And we were lucky enough to see 3 caves.
So the first cave we visited was a northern giant Buddha. Before going to the cave, there was a 9-story building. When we went in there were tons of people at first, and we couldn't really see what was going on. And once we walked forward, we could see
the bottom of a giant Buddha. You could just see from the bottom of his dress.
The drapes of the robes were really painted beautifully with colorful paintings. the toenails, that was really meticulously done.
And as you looked up, you just saw this absolutely magnificent, ginormous statue. The lips and the face, the hands were just unbelievable.
The Buddha is the second largest Buddha statue in the world, and it rises up to 112 feet. The second and third caves that we went to were replicas of the actual caves.
Unfortunately, due to different reasons, they had to close those sites to the public. It's actually very busy here, there's a lot of foot traffic, so they had to close them. The cave was probably room size, a lot smaller than the one with the giant Buddha, but they had these beautiful murals from the floor to the ceiling.
The roof was shaped like a pyramid so that it would withstand earthquakes.
And the artists here at the museum recreated them exactly how they are in the original cave.
There's this big statue of the Buddha, and then there's two statues right next to the Buddha. Dishes that were carved for monks to meditate and pray to the Buddha. I am very big into meditation, and to see this practice back in the day where they're inside in the cave, it was really, really cool.
There was actually a depiction of war. It was a story that ran across the length of a wall. I just thought that was incredible, that an artist 1,500 years ago, from many generations, different background, different language, can put together a story visually, and I can now, today, in 2017, look at it and completely understand the story. The cave was slightly smaller, but it also had just amazing murals.
And then in the roof, we can also see it's just 1,000 little mini Buddhas.
Multiple little Buddhas drawn next to each other as a pattern. It almost looked like wallpaper. They were so neatly drawn, and they were all to scale, and just the expression and the detail was all perfect.
Thus, the Mogao Caves is actually named the 1,000 Buddha Grottoes.
There was also another story that I liked there. There was an image of ancient time, issues that you can come across in life, dangers. And again, just that story, just these little imagery that was painted 1,200 years ago, and it's just so clear, and I can just read it so easily off the wall. That message and that story and that legend has just stayed.
When we went into the third cave, we could see the platform. There used to be statues of Buddhas in there, and you can even see that the paintings were kind of white and chipped off because of the statues. And unfortunately, those were either lost or raided back in the day. Tomorrow, we're actually really excited because we're gonna ride camels in the sand dunes. So I can't wait. I don't know if I'm scared of camels, but we'll see tomorrow. Today was our last day in China, and it's such a beautiful day here in Dongguan.
We got here to Mingsha, which is also known as the Echoing Sand Mountains, and they're these huge sand dunes, and as soon as we pulled in, I was just in awe of how big they were. They're way bigger than I thought they'd be, and it's just a real spectacle.
We were greeted by a herd of camels, and they were kind of cute and very funny looking and adorable.
Obviously today's the day when we get to ride the camels, and I've been really excited about that.
At first I didn't know how it was to ride the camels, but then when we got a chance to ride them, It was easier than I thought. So once we rode in, they were very laid back, chill, and a lot less scary than riding horses.
And it was just a lot of fun. The camels are really calm, docile animals, and they were great to just trot us around the mountain, and it was such a fun ride.
You can see that the mountains are almost like the shape of a golden dragon. And it's crazy to think that this mode of transportation was used years and years ago, and you can only imagine that they use these camels for days or even weeks or months just to get to their destination.
I loved riding the camel, and I would love to get a chance to do that again.
It was a fun ride, and it was a great first experience being in the sand dunes and riding camels.
After we rode the camels, we went over to the Crescent Lake,
which is an emerald-colored lake in the middle of the sand dunes, and it almost looks like a mirage because you can see it's just all desert and then just a beautiful lake.
It's kind of makes you do a double take when you see a lake in the middle of the Gobi Desert. Overall, this has just been a fantastic trip. It's a shame that it's come to an end, but we did get to do some amazing things. Everything from the first bell tower we went to see, through making noodles.
There you go. I'm definitely sad about the end of this trip because it has been such an eye-opening experience. The first highlight of this trip is seeing the northern giant Buddha. The size and beauty of that thing is beyond belief.
One thing I really enjoyed was the sheepskin raft. That was a lot of fun to ride. Definitely not what I expected, but it was great fun going down the river.
The second highlight is going to the sand dunes, riding camels.
Another great highlight was the ancient tombs. I love going down there and seeing all the carvings and the paintings on the wall. This is the first time me and Jamie travelled with a crew, and it's actually the first time we filmed anything together. That was something that was definitely a great experience.
And it almost brought us closer together, and we kind of had our little own bubble. And also at the same time, we were both exploring out of our comfort zone together.
And I think we've come out stronger because of it.
If I have to describe this trip in a few sentences with my friends, it would have to be first, it's a lot of food, be prepared. Second is contrasting. You'll see a contrast of busy cities, and also you'll see the contrast of beautiful nature and serene landscapes. And then the third would be very educational. I learned a lot about ancient Chinese history and its structures.
And I particularly like the way we decided to travel along the ancient Silk Road by taking the train. Instead of kind of flying over and not really seeing much but the two destinations, we actually got to see everything in between, and it was really fun following the ancient Silk Road and looking out the window and seeing everything.
And sketching out the Silk Road by riding the rails.
And the trains were great, really fun way to get around, and they were very efficient, and I just overall thought this has been a great trip and would definitely want to come back.
And this trip definitely opened up my perspective and helped me grow as a person.